Chris here, and I'm here with Xiaomi's new Mix 3. So it's their latest flagship, and they've changed things up a little bit. It's keeping with that mostly bezel-less design. Yes, there will be some bezel, but we've now got a slider for those front-facing cameras. So that's Xiaomi's way of doing things. Instead of having a pop-up camera, which a lot of people thought they would do, it's now a slider. So I'm going to check that out in detail. We'll take a good look at the phone here. So if you're unaware of the specs, I'll just quickly go over it. Snapdragon 845. We don't have the 855 yet. My model here is the 128GB version with 8GB of RAM. There is one with 10GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. Now that's not expandable, so that's the real con here with this, that you can't put a micro SD card on this, and there also is no 3.5mm headphone jack. So I picked this one up here from Trading Shenzhen, and they do include a Type-C to USB adapter and also a power plug adapter. So that one's not actually going to work for me because I am down in New Zealand at the moment. So the phone here, that feels actually quite a bit heavier than I thought it would. I guess because of the slider mechanism and things, they probably had to beef that up a little bit and just add a bit more metal. So under here we have a wireless charger in white, as you can see. So the max input rating of this wireless charger is 9 volts, 2 amps. It has a rubber ring around the outside there, so it's not going to slip off any cables or anything. The top of it is just this nice plastic. We have the Type-C there input, of course, and then what looks to be a status LED on the front. The charger is Qualcomm Quick Charge 3 spec, so 12 volts, 1.5 amps max, and that's going to take just over 2 hours to fully charge the phone. Then our standard Xiaomi cable here, so that's Type-C to USB. In the box below the wireless charger, you will find a 3.5mm adapter there to Type-C and our SIM tray tool. Now the included case is okay. It's made out of plastic. It does have a bit of a cheaper feel to it. It's very lightweight. It's a matte finish that it has on the outside of it, but it's not up to the same standard as the case we first got with the Mi Mix, and even the Mi Mix 2 case. This one is quite a bit cheaper and not quite as nice. So Xiaomi, I guess they are cost cutting here, or just to reduce the weight probably. So you can see on the bottom, that's the Mix 3. On the top here is my Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, and that one's 7.9, just under 8mm of thickness, and it's almost 9mm thick, the Mi Mix 3. It's also noticeably heavier too. As you can see, it comes in at 219 grams, which is getting a little bit heavy, especially when you compare it to my Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, which is 188 grams. Taking a look at the bottom, so we've got two grills here that make it look like it has dual firing downwards loudspeakers, and in fact doesn't. It's like other Xiaomi devices. So the one on the left is where you'll find the microphone inside there, and then the grill on the right side, that's our loudspeaker. I will give you a sample of that in this video. We've got a Type-C port there. Now it does support actually Qualcomm's Quick Charge 4, but you need to buy a separate charger for that, because the one that I showed you included in the box is only a Qualcomm Quick Charge 3 spec. Now you can see two antenna lines there either side, and that lip around the edge there, around the screen, to me it feels like it's metal. On the left hand side you'll find our dual nano SIM tray here. Now interesting to note that there is no rubber gasket around this. There is no IP rating on this phone, but I thought they might put a gasket on there as well just to help things out, but no. That's missing. Now that little button below it that you can see there, that's for Xiaomi's AI, so you can directly launch that, a little bit like the Bixby Assistant that you find on Samsung phones. On the rear we have a ceramic finish which feels great in hand. It says Mix by Xiaomi, a rear fingerprint reader, and then the camera bump which protrudes an extra millimeter. Housed inside this bump here, you will find a Sony IMX363 that we've seen in other Xiaomi phones. It has an aperture of f1.8, 1.4 micrometer sized pixels, and it does also have 4-axis optical image stabilization. Now the secondary sensor has a 2x optical zoom. That's another 12 megapixel sensor, and that's used with your portrait photo mode. In hand, the ceramic finish on it does feel really good, but it's extremely slippery. As I found out, I placed it on a bed and it proceeded to slide off right in front of me, so you've got to be really careful with it. On the right hand side you will find our volume and power buttons. These are made out of ceramic, just like the dedicated AI button, and they have a good feel to them. They do not rattle around and they're perfectly fine. Now if we take a look at the top here, there is an ever so slight gap between the slider, the front screen, and then the lower half. It's very hard to make out In fact, on my unit, it's really not a problem, but some people have told me that there's an issue with some units. And taking a look at that slider, so you can see a very slim top bezel. There is a little gap at the top there, and that's where the loudspeaker, which is actually below the slider, is going to transmit the sound through it. It does look to have a sensor inside it, so if I slide it up now, we get a very satisfying click noise, and it does actually feel really good. So in hand, without the case, the phone feels great. With it on, it feels just as good too. You can see it fits it well, covers those buttons. So I've just powered it up, gone straight through the whole setup. I didn't show you that because there's really no need. It's running MIUI 10, and that is on Android 9 now. What I wanted to show you here is just the settings screen, because it's a white plain screen. You can see now the bezels on here. So you can see at the top that we still do have a little bit of a bezel here. And looking at it, I think if they put slightly smaller sensors in there, that perhaps they could have actually gone with 2 front-facing cameras either side there. To me, I think it could actually be possible, and then we wouldn't, of course, need that pop-up slider. So as soon as you open the slider, you can see it's gone straight over to the camera. And when you close that, you do get a little tiny beep noise, a little confirmation. Now, I did have a rather large update out of the box. It was 2.1 gigabytes, and you can see that's brought the security patch level up to October now, the 1st of October, which is not bad. And at the time of this video, I am on the latest stable firmware. Now, if you're not familiar with MIUI 10, it just looks a little bit different. So the toggles now are styled a little bit different there. And you can see we do have a toggle there for dual GPS. And just getting out of this too, you'll see when I go back to the home screen here that the icon set, they've just tweaked it a little bit. It looks a little bit more modern. It does have quite an Apple look to it, if you ask me. I mean, take a look at the settings there. Now, because I am on the Chinese ROM here, so this is not the global ROM. There is no global ROM at the time of my video here. That should be coming out later on, but you really should just buy yourself the global version later on to save all the hassle, any problems and things like that. So you get a little bit of bloat here. You've got some bloat you can see there. Microsoft, you could consider that bloat there. So you're going to see a few things like this. You're going to see a little bit of Chinese. Now, because I'm coming from a Samsung device, I often am so used to actually just swiping up all the time to then get my apps in the apps drawer. But this doesn't have an apps drawer, of course, being MIUI. This is going to happen. You end up bringing up their own search menu, and most of it is going to be in Chinese. Now, you can set a English keyboard on here, and what I'm trying to do now is just get Google Play installed, but I have had a few issues. And it seems to be difficult to install because we're now on Android 9. That's causing a few problems now. Now, if you tap this little button here, which is on the left side, that's the AI button. This will bring up the AI, and it's only supporting Mandarin Chinese. So that's useless to everyone else. And I have no idea what it's saying there. It's probably saying it doesn't understand me at all. For free storage, we've got 116 gigabytes, so remember, you cannot expand upon that. So if you need more, you have to get the 256 gigabyte version. And for those of you that want to know here the information of the camera sensors, you can see right there, there's our sensors. So the main sensor, that's that Sony IMX363 that I mentioned. It's a reasonably good sensor, quite a good one actually. And then the secondary backup one there is a Samsung, and the front camera is another Sony with that 2 megapixel auxiliary one, being an OmniVision sensor. Now along the top you will find a notification LED. You can see it is flashing now, and this unfortunately is just in white. That's all you get. As you can see, I do have Google Play now set up and running on the phone. Now how I did this was go to apkmirror.com or any other website that you can download Google Play Store. Just grab the latest APK, and you may need to make sure that you actually get it for Android 9. Once that was installed, and then I opened it, it worked. So the Google Service Framework is actually part of the ROM now with MIUI 10. So a lot of people were asking me to show this. Now, ambient display, which is your always on display, that yes, we do have it here because we're using a Super AMOLED panel. This is a Samsung panel, and you can schedule it. Now, it will show the time, notification icons, and other info. They are warning you that it's going to increase your battery usage, of course, and this is normal. Double tap to wake is here. Now that banding you're seeing going down the screen now, that is only on camera. That's something that I always run into this problem when I record AMOLED or Super AMOLED panels. So the screen has a maximum lux of close to 600, which is really good. So even outdoors, it's quite visible. It's great. Now you do have this, the contrast and colors option inside the settings. So you're able to set this off the default. So the default is automatic. and you can go to increase contrast. You can actually tweak it yourself, but standard is actually the more correct there. It gives you a more neutral white rather than, say, a more cool white that it is out of the box. So what about the panel itself? I'm not really seeing any problems with this panel at all. It's an excellent panel, Super AMOLED from Samsung, so 2340 by 1080 is the resolution. I am seeing on the top, and just around here a little bit, but it's very hard to capture on camera, a tiny bit of what I call shadowing. So right on the edge, it's a little bit darker than normal. Now they have used rounded corners here, which aren't too round, but they're not perfect. They are a little bit distracting. I would rather actually have squared off edges there. But when you take a look at real world images, the screen does look very good. And personally, I would love to see a 1440p panel on this. Now this has a 19:9 aspect ratio, so it's stretched out to a little bit longer, but overall a very decent screen and definitely flagship grade. This is a great screen that Xiaomi's gone with, but it would be nice now to start to see 1440p screens that would be just a little bit sharper, but overall it's very good. And you can see that the blacks here, they are very dark because this is an AMOLED panel. Now I know a lot of people are going to ask me this, so I'm going to show you this. The screens, okay, yes, the Samsung has a 1440p screen. It is a better screen. It does have the curve at the edges that you either like or dislike. Now this is one thing that I pointed out and ranted on a little bit about the earlier Samsungs that I checked out that had the Super AMOLED panels in them, AMOLED panels in them, and it's the same one here that when you look at it side on with the glass, I don't know, it's because maybe they don't have the glass tinted correctly or it's just the bonding process, that it always looks different from the Samsungs. At about the same angle, you can see here that the black on the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus is darker, what you'd expect from a Super AMOLED panel. And when you take a look at this panel here, and when you put it face on, you'll notice that then, yes, it's nice and dark. But take a look at the bezel, the black there, and then the black on the screen. And then you take a look at the top bezel blackness on my Samsung, and you'll notice that it's just a lot deeper there. So it's something to do with the process. It's not a massive issue or anything like that. It's just something I wanted to point out, that compared to, say, a Samsung device with an AMOLED panel on it, it's not quite as good. So here is what that always on display looks like. It does move around, so it's not going to burn into the screen, but it will not actually show a lot of information. It'll show you missed calls, messages, and that is really about it. There's not a lot you can tweak with it. Hopefully Xiaomi will be adding that. So on the left of the screen, you can see that's the always on display from Samsung. That's on the Galaxy the Galaxy S9 Plus, and it does give us quite a bit more information there. We get battery life, we get your Facebook alerts and other alerts, and even tells you how many more other notifications you do have there. In time, hopefully Xiaomi will be adding all of that too, that always on display as well. And now just to run through a couple of things. So Widevine security level 3, we knew this was going to happen. It's most Chinese devices have this problem, so that means Netflix will not run in anything higher than standard definition. Triple support, that's been since Android 8. However, it doesn't support seamless updates. Again, this is something you always get with Xiaomi. Now, the internal storage, I did benchmark that, as you can see, and those speeds are really quite good. Not the highest I have seen, but check out the random reads there of almost 130 megabytes per second, sorry. That is really good. And when it comes to Antutu, higher than normal score that I see for the Snapdragon 845, and that's aided by the fact that we've got the 8 gigabytes of RAM here instead of the 6. It's just a little bit faster than when it comes to some of those scores, but very good. And you notice that in the UI. I just wanted to mention that everything has been smooth and fast. I haven't seen that typical UI stutter that I was getting with MIUI 9. MIUI 10 seems to have really improved upon that, which is good to see because it was frustrating. You get a brand new phone with a very fast top-end chipset and you see those stutters that should not be happening, but so far that's not the case, which is great. And you probably think, what about face unlocking? So yes, it does have it. You need to just swipe up like this and then look at the camera and it unlocks. The only problem is, of course, you just have to swipe the phone down, but that's actually not too much of an issue at all. And the fingerprint reader on the back, well, it's just like any other Xiaomi device here. It unlocks even quicker, very fast, and no problems with that. And you can see that it does pick up fingerprints. Look at it at the moment, looking rather messy now after only 4 hours of use. With just a quick update that I'll include in this video, that the ROM is not 100% bug-free. Check this out. You can see that should not be there. Take a look. It's not meant to be there at all. So something's gone really haywire with the UI right there. Now if I swipe this side, then it will show up, and then it's disappeared. So just a couple of minor little bugs. Now on to audio. So I have used the adapter to test out the quality of the audio via Type-C, of course, and it sounds fine to me. It's actually really good quality. Now, Xiaomi doesn't disappoint. I've noticed with 3.5mm headphone jacks and even audio out via the Type-C port, really good. So we only have that single downwards firing speaker. Sadly, they did not manage to actually put dual speakers on this. It would have been nice to have one at the top as well. So I'm going to test it out now and compare it to my Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, and I'll let you know now that it actually has a little bit more bass, but the S9 Plus wins on volume. But here's a sample of that loudspeaker, which I find to be decent for a single loudspeaker. So when you open the slider, it doesn't actually always default to the front-facing camera. It depends on what you were using last. That's what it'll go through to. So here you can see me right there. This is not my usual setup, so I'm not in Spain. I'm down in New Zealand at the moment. So that's why the quality of this video isn't quite the same. So you've got HDR. Of course, you have portrait modes on this. I will give you some camera samples and some video samples of that shortly. I just wanted to show you that the manual camera mode, you've got a choice between the wide or the tele lens. So that's the one that will zoom in, 2x zoom. And of course, we do have your typical settings on this. You've got white balance, you've got your focus, your shutter rate, and then the ISO, which goes all the way up to your standard 3200 that Xiaomi doesn't, for some reason, tend to go any higher than this, even though the sensor does support it. We also have the new night mode. Now this night mode, this is something I haven't seen on the previous MIUI 9. This is something they've just recently brought in. So it's similar to Huawei's night mode, the night shot mode, and other manufacturers like OnePlus that have brought in with the 6T. It's going to stitch together a lot of images and just try and give you the best night photos possible. And I will, again, in this video, give you a sample of that shortly. But before I get onto the camera samples, wanted to show you this right here. So this is our video settings, and there is something new here. So image stabilization, that is there, that option, but I don't actually think it's working in 4K. It's just the optical that's working, not the electronic. But take a look at this. We now have this right here, 60 frames per second 4K like other manufacturers. I knew the sensor could do it. So this is the front-facing camera now, and we've got 1080p max, even though the sensor could probably actually do 4K, and for some reason we still don't have any electronic image stabilization on the front-facing camera, which is disappointing. It's about time that Xiaomi actually added that in. After all, there's a lot of manufacturers, Samsung, OnePlus, that are using electronic on the front-facing cameras. And if you have a shaky hand like me, then the footage tends to be quite shaky, as you can see. Overall, this front-facing camera quality is good. It's not having that big problem that we did see in the past with Xiaomi phones with overexposing the front-facing camera. That was something that was plaguing MIUI 9. Seems to be a lot better here. It's just, of course, the wind noise you're going to hear. That's going to be a problem with any phone, because at the moment it is quite windy. There's a bit of a storm that's coming in. 4K video sample now. So this one's in 30 frames per second because my video is being shot in 30 frames per second as well. So we'll have to upload a 60K sample separately for that. So the quality you can see is quite good. The optical image stabilization is working well on that Sony IMX363 sensor. However, when I walk along here, you can see that, to me, I don't believe it's using electronic image stabilization. If it is, it's only a little bit, because I am seeing some OAS wobble there a little bit with it. Now there will be a bit of wind noise here. It's quite windy today. The weather's not exactly amazing. We've had a bit of rain. But check this out. Focus, just like the other dual pixel face detection autofocus cameras I've reviewed, the focus is really good. So no more focus hunting like the earlier Xiaomi's, the other flagships. They did not have this focus technology. It is really quite good. So overall, the video quality for 4K is looking great. And let me know in the comments if you do want to see that 60 frames per second sample, and I'll try to upload that or give you a link to it at least. This is now a quick sample being shot with Open Camera. That's a third-party application with the electronic image stabilization enabled. and you can see that it's making absolutely no difference here. We are getting that same level as we did with just the stock app, so it's shaking around. Sadly, it's not going to use electronic image stabilization with open camera. The focus sometimes does also seem to be a little bit slower, not quite as good as the stock app, so I see no reason to use open camera. And gaming, well, with the 8GB of RAM and the Snapdragon 845, it's as you'd expect. I don't really need to go into real detail here that it's going to play all the latest games. This is PUBG on the high setting, and it runs it super smooth. High frame rate, and the highest setting I can choose there, so no problems at all running the top and latest games. Now, one thing I have noticed, which isn't too great, you get a little bit of play actually that I didn't notice when you're holding it in portrait mode. You don't really notice this at all. But if you happen to hold it right now, you see when I move like this, it will actually move a little tiny bit. There's a little bit of play that's coming through from each corner there. Just a tiny little bit of rocking. It's about 1 millimeter. Now, I haven't had enough time on with the phone to give you an exact battery life figure, but it's looking like around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time. Now, I've been using it a lot at the moment. I was recording a lot of 4K video, taking photos, so very, very heavy use. And it's only been on for about 2.5 hours of on-screen time. And during that, I have lost about 40% battery life, but it's only the first charge here. So after I've gone and cycled that battery a few times, I will have an update video with battery life, so keep an eye out for that. So that's the Xiaomi Mi Mix 3, and my first impressions overall very good. It's an excellent device. Build quality is good. It's right up there. I've noticed, as I pointed out, a little bit of play, that when you have the phone in landscape, that if you do push up against it, there's a little bit of play and movement in that slider. Now, I don't believe it's going to be a big problem, but I just did want to actually point that out, because when you're holding it in portrait like you would normally a phone, using it most of the time like that, you don't notice it then. Now, the slider does feel really nice the way it slides up and clicks into place. No issues with that. It does have a good feeling, and it's great to have slider phones, and we're working away from the notch, which is great, because I'm not a huge fan of notches, and good to see other solutions like pop-up cameras and now the slider here from Xiaomi. So the UI is fast, it feels smooth, it's fluid, the performance overall is really good. I have noticed a couple of bugs there that when I showed you that it wasn't quite right, the UI. There's a couple of little tiny little glitches there, but I haven't seen the usual stuttering. I have tested out full gesture mode, and I'm not seeing that stuttering that I was getting on MIUI 9, so hopefully this is fixed for good. Now the camera, very good focus on it, as expected for dual pixel phase detection autofocus, so that's working well. 4K video looks good. However, the 60 frames per second video, by the way, great to have that option. I find the quality that you see a few more compression artifacts in that, so hopefully it's just because it needs to be tweaked a little bit more with the software. So there's definitely going to be some bug fixes, improvements coming through here. Now, the other thing I want to also mention is that we are missing out on dual loudspeakers. So the loudspeaker that it's got is still good, but compared to other flagships, we're missing out on a couple of things. IP rating, no micro SD card support, no 3.5mm headphone jack. I'm pretty sure most of you will be aware of those problems there. But as a package all in all, it's really good. Very nice screen on this. It's bright. You can make it out in direct sunlight. And then we've got options of even up to 10 gigabytes of RAM, which is a complete gimmick. You don't need to pay the extra for that because MIUI is not actually going to really let you take advantage. And who's going to be multitasking really? That is going to be able to fill up and need 10 gigabytes of RAM. I think that 6 and 8 is going to be perfect for most people. So as we can't expand the storage, it's not expandable, make sure you get the version that suits you best. So if you need over 120 gigabytes of storage free, you got a massive music collection, whatever, then make sure you get the 256 gigabyte version. All in all, it's a good looking phone. The night mode as well with the camera, it definitely does improve things. I'm not too sure if it's as good as other manufacturers like Google's Night Sight. I'll have to get my hands on one of those, of course, to compare that. But I will be back with updates on things like battery life and how long it takes to wirelessly charge it. Great to see that that is included in the box. And also the main use out of it, if I encounter any more problems, any more bugs or anything like that. But really great looking phone. Thank you so much for watching this hands-on and first impressions. And I will be back, as I mentioned, with battery life and a few other things with a follow-up video. Bye for now.